The obvious and clear reason to why Puppy wants the prototype dead is that she has been locked inside a box for so long, restrained and prevented from doing anything or even moving, which acted like her captivity, which would drive anyone to the brink of insanity and resentment for anyone who would do that. So she essentially has a big vendetta against the prototype who ordered Mommy Longlegs to trap Puppy inside her box. But this goes even further than that, as Puppy herself explains that the main reason that she hates the prototype is because he brought the end of everyone's life in the factory, killing anyone innocent or guilty, not caring who he kills. Puppy explains that she wants to seek revenge for what the prototype has done to the innocent employees, many who didn't know about the experiments, and many who cared about the children, as we hear in the tapes, to the point that they wanted to adopt them.
The way her eyes darted around the room, and I swear, her hand in mine, it felt like her blood was boiling beneath her skin. I could feel her poor little heart pounding. For her, it was right there. And her movements, they were so wild. Arms flailing, legs kicking. I wanted to talk to her, see how she's doing. I really need to hear her voice right now.
That would not be advised, Miss Harper.
I mean, don't you think these kids deserve some real sunlight instead of floodlights and painted skies? Hell, we're not even allowed to talk to these kids. Isn't that... Sorry, Stu.
I understand you want to give Jeremy that home?
Yes, and we would like to adopt.
Amazing!
But more to that, Puppy's reasoning doesn't only end there, as she explains many toys who opposed the prototype were also brutally killed, such as Duck Day, the main Smiling Critter mascots, and many more. Puppy being a prime example who was locked away in isolation for so long, as she explains it, being left only with her thoughts of what she would do when she is free. A few questions come up when thinking to why Puppy was only boxed away and trapped rather than just being killed, just like how many toys were brutally killed who opposed the prototype. Also, how did Puppy survive locked away for so long without eating anything? As we learn, the toys have a digestive system just like humans and require to eat. Just how we learned from the teacher, Miss Delight, who was left with no other choice but to kill her peers to eat them and survive. But let's leave this for another video and get back to why Puppy hates the prototype so much. So the very first theory, or at this point explanation, is that the prototype killed many innocent people and toys who didn't deserve such fate, and many are still living beneath the factory who are suffering, which doesn't sit really well with Puppy. Puppy paints an image that the prototype is the true evil, someone who is filled with revenge and anger, who kills anyone in his way, and Puppy is the force of good and justice, who wants to kill the ones responsible for such a massacre and free the ones who still live. This all seems good and noble, but we know for a fact that there are always two sides to a story, and the characters' sides are not black and white, but rather gray. So heroes are not all good and villains are not all bad, but either sides have their good and bad sides. Actions that they try to always justify, and justifications which at times make sense and at times not at all. And they all depend on the viewer's perspective. So on one hand, we can say that the prototype suffered a lot and the people that he killed deserved it, and he had no other choice but to kill everyone, as otherwise even the good ones would inform the authorities, who would then perform more experiments on the newly found specimens, which are the living dolls. On the other hand, these innocent people were innocent and didn't deserve having their lives taken away from them. There could always be more reasons to why the prototype killed the innocent, and these reasons can be viewed differently based on different people's perspective. If one was a tortured and experimented on doll, they would probably only see pain and misery and side with the prototype and understand all must die, as even a single living soul could report this and cause the doom of all the living dolls, even the ones who didn't participate in the massacre known as the Hour of Joy. On the other hand, being a caring adult who loved the children and wanted to adopt them, seeing the hostile dolls killing these adults, they would see them as monsters who deserve death. So essentially, the justification to these reasons can be manipulated based on each party's perspective, and to Poppy. Even though she is a doll experimented on, she sees the dolls as the true villains and does not see it justified. Her perspective is that the adults did not deserve death, even though there could be repercussions of not killing everyone. So at first, her resentment and vendetta against the prototype could be a no-brainer. The prototype deserves to die, as he brutally killed everyone. But again, what would happen if he wouldn't rebel? What would happen to the dolls and the orphan children and babies who are added to the factory every single day with new good-for-nothing parents abandoning them, or simply parents passing away, leaving the innocent babies orphaned? The clear answer is, if the prototype wouldn't do what he did, for generations and generations, the organization would run, with more and more children getting experimented on and the existing dolls being tortured, killed, and abused. So we can all agree that there had to be something done for this to stop. The prototype attempted to escape on many different occasions, which all led to him being recaptured and tortured even more. Huggy Wuggy tried to escape once, which also led to him being recaptured. So running away was not simply an option for them, as the organization would recapture them again, or worse, kill them. Also, if the prototype would simply choose to run away, he would let the organization carry on its evil and cruel procedure and routine, experimenting on more people. So we can agree that the prototype's action to put an end to it by stopping the people responsible, which would only mean destroying them, which would ensure an end to it, was in some way justified. Up to that point, possibly majority of people would find this a good justification. But when this starts becoming controversial is when the prototype kills all the employees, including the ones who were innocent. He killed those innocent adults who wanted to adopt children even. Poppy even calls it senseless slaughter, and that's all that was about it.
Senseless slaughter, that's all it really was. They killed everyone.
But is that really the case? Was it really senseless slaughter? Even though we have heard over and over that the prototype is the most intelligent of all, whose decisions and actions were well thought out.
The prototype seems to possess an unprecedented level of intelligence, beyond that of all other test subjects, as well as an alarming willingness to commit violence. Further suppression treatments will need to be enacted to ensure that no other experiments develop these qualities.
If we really think more about it, the prototype was kept isolated, being heavily monitored, being in captivity beneath the factory in a place they refer to as labs, his home. He was isolated and under observation 24/7, with a scientist even saying how losing sight of him for only 28 seconds led to one casualty.
These actions allowed him 28.3 seconds completely unmonitored. Once function returned to the camera, the room appeared to be empty. One surveillance specialist went in to confirm his absence. However, upon opening the door, she realized that the prototype had hidden in one of the camera's blind spots. The prototype attempted to escape through the open door. However, another surveillance specialist was able to remotely relock the door, despite the other specialists still being inside. One casualty occurred.
So we can say he had to make a decision to overthrow the power of the organization with the first chance that he got. So it wasn't really senseless at all. The specifics of how he got the chance and the events before the Hour of Joy are not very clear, but it's most likely Catnap had a hand in it, as he in some way managed to communicate with the prototype, possibly bypassing security and surveillance, going to the labs. One tape, however, mentions how the prototype alongside some other experiments went missing, which could be Mummy Longlegs, Catnap, and some more.
Final log. In relation, experiment 1006, the prototype. Though still missing, today's events are no doubt in relation to him. His absence was a flaw in the scientific process, which should have under no circumstances been left unaccounted for. That's why I'm making this log, so that the same mistake won't be made twice. Any future experiments will need to be contained and disposed of in a secure location.
So it seems going unnoticed by the organization, Catnap sabotaged the security system and let the prototype out, who all in a span of minutes or hours organized the massacre, thinking on their feet, acting quick in order to escape and take over the organization. So in reality, they didn't have a lot of time to make a well thought out plan, and the clock was ticking before they would get recaptured. So they had to do something very quickly to make sure that they won't get recaptured again, with the massacre seemingly being the best decision out there. It can be said in the heat of the moment, they were seeing only red as well, coupled with their resentment, cognitive and abilities impaired due to the experiments and transition into dolls, and the howling hunger that they felt. They all went on a rampage, killing anyone. It's not clear if they had any remorse afterwards, but clearly some did. Dolls such as Kissy Missy, who took part in the massacre, but later on was helping the protagonist and Puppy. Also keep in mind, majority of the dolls were children with a child mind, which never had the natural development, so they can't really be blamed that much for making such a rash decision. They simply didn't have a full rational thinking ability. But for the prototype, he had to act fast, as he knew just leaving or killing a few would result in him being chased down, with the security measures becoming even stricter. On top of that, the prototype probably knew if he leaves some employees alive, even the innocent ones, they would surely report such a brutal massacre, with the authorities hunting these dolls down and maybe even doing much worse. So for the prototype, who was isolated and tortured in labs for many years, being one of the earliest successful experiments, he started not seeing any difference between humans and acted on instinct that sparing anyone would lead to his doom and the others. His actions afterwards, though, killing anyone who opposed them, can be argued that could be prevented. But again, not having the full context, we cannot say much. In a tape we can hear how he kept the children away from Miss Delight, presumably to keep them safe from her, who wanted to kill them.
Please, where are the children? Are they in the same place as the employees?
No.
Are the children safe?
Yes.
Ah. Can I see them?
No.
And that was it. That's all he'd tell me. Probably because he knew I'd kill them all.
There might still be some living employees as well, as Miss Delight mentioned, if the children are with the employees, but we don't know for sure if she referred to them as living or their stored corpses. Either way, through the prototype's perspective, his actions were justified, but through Puppy's perspective, she sees him as the true evil dictator who needs to die. Now, even though Puppy's actions seem to be selfless and heroic to put an end to the prototype's tyranny, I personally think her journey to kill the prototype and the ones who follow him to be much more personal. After all, she was an experimented on doll as well, who was stripped from her humanity and her rights. She was reduced to a small doll, incapable of functioning without a helping hand. Why would she care so much about the killed employees, to the point that she would go on a mission to risk her own freedom and life to kill the prototype? What's interesting is that she wasn't even killed, but instead put inside a box, so it's clear that her role in the organization was much more crucial than she is willing to reveal. It seems to me as if some or even one of the people who were killed in the factory were very close to her. That's why she became so vengeful after they were brutally killed by the prototype. It's usually love that makes someone go so far as risking their own lives to seek vengeance after it's all over. People often fight to end a senseless and cruel slaughter or injustice, but they don't typically go on to seek vengeance when it's all done. It's usually when someone loses their loved ones which drives them into a frenzy of violence. So it seems as if Puppy had a love interest whose life was taken, hence why she wants the prototype dead. On another hand, I made a theory that Puppy is very likely still a Greybear, an employee who fantasized about immortality and always being young and how dolls never get old.
So, Stella, what made you want to work at the Playtime Co-Factory?
Playing with toys when I was young was so magical. Sometimes though, I really wish I could go back. To being a kid, I mean. And it's weird, because adults are just kids, but older. I don't think anyone ever really feels like an adult, but your body just gets older and older, and then you die. Human bodies just can't stay young forever. There's things though, like some trees that can stay alive even while being way older than a person. I mean, the oldest people to ever live are still younger than those. So I guess everyone is always young relative to something.
So it seems like a dead giveaway that she voluntarily participated in the experimentations and wanted to be transformed into a doll to be always living. Her lack of requirement for eating is also a sign that she was one of the only experiments who was treated in such a way not to need to eat, as that would allow her to live on forever. Basically, no functional digestive system means no functional living organs needing food, hence no cells getting older and eventually dying, making her immortal and forever young. So if she was Stella who worked closely with the organization to be transformed into a doll voluntarily, it would all make sense to why she would be against the prototype, as she was one of the evil scientists and employees who performed the experiments. Just because she was a doll didn't make her one of the dolls. Therefore, the organization being toppled down made her lose her power and protection against the vengeful and resentful dolls and toys. She was also not maintained and looked after anymore, meaning if she would sustain any damage, she would be left like that. Therefore, the people who were killed were her friends and peers and the ones who looked after her, which makes sense to why she would want to kill the prototype. Also, being put away in a box, not able to move, made her want to destroy the prototype so she can move freely without any obstacle. In conclusion, there is a lot more to Puppy than she wants to show. There is definitely something that she will gain from killing the prototype as well, and it's worth looking into. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Is Puppy really selfless and innocent as she tries to portray herself, or is there a darkness within her that she tries to hide? As always, it's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.